My name is Mia, I'm 22 years old, and last month I graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in business administration. It should have been the happiest day of my life. After years of late nights, part-time jobs, and sacrifices, I finally walked across that stage in my cap and gown. But instead of celebrating, my graduation became the night everything inside me broke. I grew up in a small town in Ohio. My family was never close, and to be honest, we never really liked each other much either. My mom, Denise, has always been bitter. She had me when she was young and never let me forget that she gave up her dreams because of me. My dad, Tom, is the kind of man who avoids conflict by joking his way through life. And then there's me, quiet, focused, always the black sheep for wanting more than the life they settled for. When the ceremony ended, I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd be proud. Instead, while my friends hugged their families and posed for pictures, my mother stepped right in front of mine. She looked at me in my gown and said loud enough for everyone to hear. "She thinks she's better than the rest of us." The air went cold. My friends froze, their smiles fading. My father chuckled awkwardly and said, "She's just nervous, don't mind her," but the damage was already done. I stood there, silent, my throat tightening, humiliated in front of everyone I cared about. That night, while the rest of the world was sleeping off champagne toasts and dinners, I was awake, replaying her words. Something snapped inside me. For years, I swallowed every insult, every guilt trip, every time they dragged me down. But not anymore. By 7:15 the next morning, when they knocked on my bedroom door, the damage was already done. When I say the damage was already done, I don't mean I hurt anyone physically. That was never the plan. But for the first time in my life, I stopped being the quiet, obedient daughter and decided to hit them where it really hurts, their pride, their image, and the control they thought they had over me. After everyone went to bed that night, I sat on the floor of my childhood bedroom, still wearing the honor cords from graduation. My diploma was on the desk, untouched, like it didn't even belong to me. And then I opened my laptop. See, my family had secrets. Ugly ones. My mom has spent years talking badly about me to relatives, but behind closed doors, she was the one hiding things. She stole money from her job at the diner, wrote bad checks, and even used my name once to open a credit card she never paid off. I'd found out about that my sophomore year of college when collection calls started coming my way. Instead of exploding then, I bit my tongue, worked 2 jobs, and quietly built a folder of every piece of evidence I could find. And my dad? He wasn't innocent either. He'd been gambling for years, hiding it behind business trips. I knew where he went, who he owed money to, and even had receipts that could ruin him. That night, I typed up everything. Every receipt, every screenshot, every bank statement I'd saved. I created an email list of every relative, family friend, and even the church pastor who'd always taken my mom's side. At exactly 3:07 a.m., I pressed send. By sunrise, their reputations were gone. At 7:15 a.m., there was a knock at my door. My mom's voice, sharp and shaky, "Mia, what did you do?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted them to feel that silence. I sat on the edge of my bed, listening to my mother's frantic knocking. For once, she wasn't in control. Her voice cracked as she repeated my name, softer this time, almost pleading. My dad's voice followed, lower, but tense, the way it gets when he knows he's cornered. I let them wait. For 22 years, I'd been the one waiting, for an apology, for support, for a moment of pride that never came. Now it was their turn. Finally, I stood, straightened my t-shirt, and opened the door. They both looked pale, almost sick. My mother clutched her phone in one hand, shaking. "You sent it," she hissed. I didn't deny it. I just met her eyes and said, "I told the truth." My dad stepped in quickly, his hand half raised like he wanted to calm me. "Mia, listen, we can fix this. Just delete it, say you made a mistake." I laughed. I hadn't laughed in front of them in years, but it came out sharp and bitter. A mistake? You used my name to commit fraud. You've been stealing and lying for years. That wasn't me, Dad. That was you. Both of you. My mom's face twisted. Do you know what you've done to this family? People are calling me, your aunt is furious, the pastor. The pastor knows you're a thief now, I cut in. My voice was steady, calm in a way that scared even me. And my aunt? She knows the truth about how you borrowed money from her and never paid it back. This family isn't ruined because of me. It's ruined because of what you did. I just stopped covering it up. They stood there in silence, like strangers who'd been unmasked. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in front of them. I felt powerful. And I wasn't finished yet. Standing in that doorway, watching them squirm, I realized exposing their secrets wasn't enough. Sure, their reputations were in shambles, but I wanted them to feel the same helplessness I had felt my whole life. I wanted them to know what it was like to have no way out. So while they were busy scrambling on the phone, trying to do damage control with relatives, I went downstairs and poured myself a cup of coffee like I owned the place. They followed me into the kitchen, hovering, whispering frantically. I didn't say a word. Instead, I slid my laptop onto the table and opened a folder I'd labeled Step 2. Their faces drained when they saw what was inside. It wasn't just family secrets I had collected. I'd kept everything, emails from the credit card company proving my mom had used my name, screenshots of my dad's gambling accounts, even photos of the men he owed money to when they showed up at our house once, demanding cash. I had already sent the first wave of information to relatives, but the second wave, that was for the authorities. I already sent the first email, I said calmly, sipping my coffee. But if I don't get what I want, the next batch goes to the police. Fraud. Theft. Illegal gambling. You could lose the house, maybe even face charges. My mom's hand gripped the counter so hard her knuckles turned white. You wouldn't dare, she whispered. I leaned forward, meeting her eyes. I already did. The truth was, I hadn't sent it yet, but they didn't need to know that. Watching them panic was enough for now. I told them my terms. They were going to pay me back every cent they'd stolen under my name. They were going to sign over the savings account they'd hidden from me. And most importantly, they were never going to stand in the way of my future again. It was the first time I'd ever seen my parents look truly afraid of me. The kitchen felt like a battlefield, me on one side of the table, my parents on the other. For once, I wasn't the one shrinking back. I sat straight, steady, while they looked like people watching their whole world crumble. My dad was the first to speak. He let out a shaky laugh, the same kind he always used when he wanted to pretend things weren't as bad as they were. Mia, come on. We're family. You don't want to drag this through the mud. Just, let's figure this out together. I shook my head. No, Dad. You figure it out. I'm done protecting you. My mom slammed her hand on the table, her eyes burning into me. You ungrateful little girl. After everything we did for you, food on the table, a roof over your head, this is how you repay us? By trying to destroy us? Her words didn't sting like they used to. I'd been rehearsing for this moment for years. You didn't give me a roof. You gave me a cage. And all I'm doing now is unlocking the door. Silence stretched between us. My father finally sighed, rubbing his temples. What exactly do you want? I slid a printed list across the table. I'd prepared it weeks ago, long before graduation. Part of me must have known this day would come. On it was everything they owed me, the fraudulent credit card balance, the student loan payments I'd covered because of my ruined credit, and the $7,000 they'd borrowed from my savings when I was in high school. You'll pay me back. Every cent, I said. And I want it in writing, signed and dated. If not, the next email goes out. My dad stared at the list. My mom crossed her arms, defiant, but I saw the flicker of fear in her eyes. For the first time, the balance of power had shifted. My mom snatched the paper off the table and scanned it, her face tightening with every line. When she reached the bottom, she crumpled it in her fist. "You think you can blackmail your own parents?" she hissed. I leaned back in my chair, calm, collected. Blackmail is when you lie. I'm just asking for what's mine. The truth is already out there, you can't take it back. My dad's eyes darted between us, his voice low and urgent. "Denise, stop. She's serious." He reached for the list she'd crushed in her hand, smoothing it out like it was a peace treaty. But my mom wasn't ready to surrender. She glared at me, her jaw set. "You're bluffing. You wouldn't dare go to the police. You'd ruin your own future if you dragged us down." I almost smiled. That's exactly what she always did, twist my decisions back on me, make me doubt myself. But not this time. I reached for my laptop and pulled up the draft email. The subject line was clear as day: evidence of fraud and gambling activities, for immediate review. The recipient? The county sheriff's office. Her face drained of color. "You think I won't hit send?" I asked quietly, my finger hovering over the trackpad. "Try me." For a long moment, the only sound in the room was the humming of the fridge. My dad finally exhaled, defeated. "All right, Mia. We'll do it. We'll pay you back. Just, don't send it." But my mom wasn't done. She shot him a furious look, then turned back to me. "Fine. We'll agree. But don't think you're walking away clean. You've made enemies today, Mia. And you won't see it coming when it's your turn to fall." I met her threat with a steady gaze. "Then I guess we'll see who falls first." Inside, I already knew, I wasn't finished with them. Not by a long shot. By the next morning, I had already printed out a formal repayment agreement. I wasn't naive enough to take just their word for it. If I'd learned anything growing up in that house, it was that promises meant nothing without proof. I sat them both down at the kitchen table with the papers in front of them. "Sign it," I said simply. My dad looked exhausted, like the weight of the last 24 hours had finally crushed him. He didn't argue, didn't stall, just picked up the pen and signed his name. My mom, on the other hand, sat with her arms crossed, lips tight. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "You can't force us to do this." I pushed the pen toward her. "I don't have to force you. The evidence will do that for me." She hesitated, but eventually, she snatched up the pen. I watched closely as she signed, her movements jerky and sharp, almost violent. For a moment, it felt like I'd won, that I'd finally cornered them. But I should have known better. Later that evening, I found her in the living room on the phone, whispering urgently. She didn't hear me come in. "Yes, she thinks she's smart, don't worry, I'll handle it." "No, she doesn't know about the other account." My stomach tightened. Another account? That meant there was more money, money she hadn't told me about. She must have thought she could outmaneuver me, just like always. I didn't interrupt her call. Instead, I quietly walked back upstairs and pulled out my notebook. If she wanted to play games, then fine. I'd been playing her game my entire life. Only now, I was finally good at it. That night, I started digging deeper. Bank records. Property tax filings. Even social media posts where she bragged about new gifts she bought herself. If my mother thought she could sign her way out of this and then cheat me, she was in for the biggest shock of her life. By the end of that week, I had built a whole new case file. My mother had been sloppy. She never thought I'd have the guts, or the brains, to dig deeper. But I had patience on my side, and years of bitterness fueling me. I started small. A quick check of the county's online property tax database showed something interesting: a small plot of land, 2 hours outside of town, in her name. It wasn't much, just a rundown cabin by the lake, but she had been paying the taxes on it quietly for years. My dad didn't even know about it. Next, I combed through her Facebook posts. She had tagged a friend in a picture just a few months back, holding a designer purse she definitely couldn't have bought with diner wages. That led me to the friend's page, and then to an Instagram photo where my mom was standing next to a brand new SUV. She had claimed it was a gift from her boss. But when I pulled up DMV records under her name, there it was, the SUV registered to her secret account. Finally, I cracked it. With a little persistence and a lot of late-night sleuthing, I found the hidden bank account. Over $18,000 sat in it, money she'd skimmed over the years, probably from a mix of stolen tips, bad checks, and maybe even more fraud under other people's names. I sat there staring at the screen, my pulse racing. $18,000. That was more than enough to pay me back everything she owed and then some. But instead of confronting her right away, I decided to wait. To set the trap. I printed out every piece of evidence and tucked it into a manila folder. Then I left it on the kitchen counter where I knew she'd find it, but without a word from me. If my mother wanted to lie and scheme, then she was about to see what it felt like to be outplayed. I left the folder on the counter before heading to bed, and I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my mother's voice echoing through the kitchen. "What the hell is this?" she shouted, her tone sharp, but I could hear the wobble beneath it. I walked downstairs slowly, deliberately, like I had all the time in the world. When I entered the kitchen, she was standing there with the folder open, papers scattered across the table. Her hands were trembling. My dad sat silently in the corner, his head in his hands, like he already knew she'd been caught. I poured myself a glass of water before answering. "That," I said evenly, "is proof that you've been hiding money. Lying. Stealing. Again." Her face twisted. "You went through my private accounts? My property? Do you have any idea how illegal?" "Illegal?" I cut her off. "Like opening a credit card in your daughter's name? Like stealing from your job? Like hiding assets while pretending we're broke?" She froze. My dad finally lifted his head, his expression weary. "Denise, is it true?" She didn't answer, and that was all the confirmation he needed. He looked at me, almost apologetic, as if he'd finally realized the scale of what I'd uncovered. I leaned forward, resting my hands on the table. "Here's how this works, you sign everything over. The savings, the hidden account, even that cabin you've been paying off behind Dad's back. Every cent you've stolen over the years is mine now. If you fight me, those files go to the police. And believe me, I won't hesitate this time." Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me the way a cornered animal looks at its predator, angry, desperate, but above all, afraid. For once, I wasn't the weak one in the room. I was the one holding the knife, and she knew it. The silence in the kitchen was suffocating. My mom stood frozen, clutching the folder like it might vanish if she held it tight enough. My dad sat slumped in his chair, staring at the table, his face drained of all color. Finally, he spoke. "Denise, just give it to her. It's over." My mom whipped her head toward him, eyes blazing. "Over? Are you insane? Do you know what she's asking?" "That's everything, Tom. Everything I worked for." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "Everything you stole, you mean?" Her glare snapped back to me. "You don't understand what it's like to sacrifice, to live scraping by, to fight for every dollar." "No," I said, my voice steady, "I understand what it's like to suffer for your choices. I've been cleaning up your messes since I was 16. The late notices, the calls, the debt collectors breathing down my neck because you dragged my name through the dirt. Don't talk to me about sacrifice, Mom, I lived it." My dad rubbed his face and muttered, "She's right, Denise." That broke something in her. She slammed her fist on the table so hard the glasses rattled. "You're siding with her? After everything? She's blackmailing us, Tom." He shot back, his voice sharper than I'd ever heard. "She's holding us accountable, something you and I never did. And maybe it's about damn time." The two of them went back and forth, her accusing, him deflecting, years of resentment spilling out in front of me. I just stood there, arms crossed, watching. It was strange, almost surreal, seeing them unravel. But beneath the shouting, I knew one thing: I had them both cornered. My mother could rage, my father could plead, but the evidence spoke louder than either of them. I wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. The shouting match between my parents had gone on long enough. I'd listened to their excuses, their blame shifting, their pathetic attempts to turn this back on me. But I wasn't 16 anymore. I wasn't powerless. I slammed my hand on the table, cutting them both off. Enough. This isn't a negotiation. You have two choices: sign everything over, or I hit send. You've got until tomorrow morning. No stalling, no excuses. The room went dead silent. My mom's eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw real hatred there. Not disappointment. Not frustration. Pure, unfiltered hate. You think you've won, she whispered, her voice cold. But you don't know what you've started, Mia. You think this little game of yours makes you strong? It makes you dangerous. And dangerous people get burned. I didn't flinch. Then I guess you should have thought about that before you lit the match. My dad stood slowly, his shoulders sagging. Denise, listen to her. She's not bluffing. We've lost. Don't drag this out. She spun on him like a storm. You coward. You've been weak your whole life, and now you want me to just roll over and let her destroy us? Her words bounced off me like nothing. I'd heard it all before: weak, selfish, ungrateful. Only this time, the shame wasn't mine. It was hers. I leaned across the table, locking eyes with her. I'll say this once. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, I want signatures and proof that every account has been transferred. If not, that folder goes to the police, the IRS, and every single person you've conned. Your choice, Mom. Burn with it, or cut your losses. Her lips trembled, and for a split second, I thought she might lunge at me. But instead, she stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. My dad stayed behind, staring at me with something I'd never seen from him before. Respect. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, waiting for morning to come. Part of me expected my mom to try something reckless, to scream at me again, to rip up the papers, maybe even try to erase the evidence. But I was ready. Every document was backed up to the cloud, every screenshot saved twice over. Even if she burned the folder, I still held all the power. At 7:59 a.m., I walked into the kitchen. My dad was already there, sitting at the table with a stack of papers. His eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't slept either. She's coming, he said quietly. A moment later, my mom entered. Her face was pale, her hair a mess, and in her hand she held a pen. For the first time, she didn't look like the woman who had humiliated me in front of my friends, or the one who had screamed her way through every fight. She looked beaten. She dropped the papers on the table. Bank transfers. Property documents. The savings account. Even the hidden account I'd uncovered. My name was written clearly as the new owner. I hope you choke on it, she muttered, signing the last page with a shaky hand. I didn't respond. I just gathered the papers neatly, slid them into my folder, and tucked them under my arm. My dad signed as well, barely glancing at me, but I could see it, relief etched across his face. For a moment, the kitchen was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm has ripped through, leaving nothing but wreckage behind. My mom finally looked at me, her eyes hard. You think you've won, but you'll regret this, Mia. You'll see. Family doesn't forget betrayal. I held her gaze, calm and steady. Neither do daughters. Then I walked out. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was running away from them, I felt like I was walking towards something new. Leaving that house felt like shedding a skin I'd been trapped in for years. I drove back to my apartment with the folder sitting in the passenger seat like a trophy. It wasn't just paper, it was freedom. Proof that, finally, I had taken back everything they'd stolen from me. The first thing I did was pay off the credit card debt that had haunted me since college. Watching that balance drop to zero felt like cutting chains off my ankles. Next, I set up a savings account in my own name, mine alone, no one else's, and transferred the rest of the money there. For once, I wasn't starting from behind. I was ahead. But the ripple effect started quickly. Within a week, the phone calls began. My aunt called, furious at my mom for lying to the whole family. My cousin messaged me on Facebook, saying she always suspected something was off with my parents but never had proof. Even the pastor's wife sent me a private message, polite, but laced with judgment, asking if it was true about the fraud and gambling. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth was out, and I wasn't cleaning up their mess anymore. At work, something shifted too. My boss, who had come to my graduation, pulled me aside one afternoon. "Mia," she said, "I don't know exactly what happened with your family, but I want you to know, your strength shows. Not many people could stand tall after something like that." For the first time, I realized my revenge hadn't just broken them, it had rebuilt me. But I also knew my mother wasn't done. She'd made that clear in her threats. And I could already sense it, somewhere, she was planning her next move. I wasn't afraid. If she wanted a war, I was more than ready to finish it. It didn't take long for my mother to make her move. She was never the type to lick her wounds quietly. A few weeks after I walked away, I came home from work to find a thick envelope slid under my apartment door. My name was scrawled across the front in her handwriting. Inside was a letter, pages long, dripping with venom. She accused me of tearing the family apart, of humiliating her in front of everyone, of being ungrateful after all her so-called sacrifices. But it wasn't just words. She included copies of old report cards, medical bills, even a photo of me in high school looking awkward and fragile. Scribbled across the bottom of the last page, she wrote, "You may think you're free, but I will always own a piece of you. You'll never escape me." For a moment, I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the old fear she used to control me with. But then I remembered, I wasn't that girl anymore. Instead of burning the letter or letting it get to me, I called my lawyer. Yes, I'd already taken steps to protect myself. A coworker had recommended someone good, and I'd quietly handed over copies of all the evidence weeks ago. I showed him the letter, and he told me exactly what I needed to hear. "She's trying to intimidate you. Legally, she has no power left. But if she keeps this up, we can take action against her." For the first time, I realized the dynamic had shifted permanently. She could scream, threaten, even try to shame me, but she no longer had leverage. I did. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't her last attempt. My mother had built her whole life on control. And people like her don't give it up without a final, desperate strike. What she didn't know was that I was already preparing for it. Her final strike came one rainy Saturday morning. I was sipping coffee, watching the storm roll past my window, when my phone buzzed with a notification, a post from my mother on Facebook. She had gone public. Paragraphs of lies filled the screen, claims that I had stolen money from them, that I was the reason my dad gambled, that I had always been a selfish child who thought she was better than everyone else. She tagged half the family and even some of my old high school teachers. For a second, my stomach dropped. Old habits die hard, and my first instinct was panic. What if people believed her? But then I reminded myself, I had the truth. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. Within an hour, I uploaded my own post. Not emotional, not vengeful, just factual. I attached screenshots, bank statements, and legal documents showing every fraud, every debt, every hidden account. I kept my words simple. The truth may hurt, but lies hurt worse. I won't let anyone rewrite my story. Here are the facts. It spread faster than I expected. Friends, co-workers, even relatives who once sided with her began commenting in support. A few messaged me privately, saying they finally saw the reality they'd ignored for years. By the end of the day, my mother had deleted her post. By the end of the week, she had deactivated her account altogether. My father called once, his voice tired, almost broken. "Mia. I'm sorry. It wasn't enough, but it was something. I won't pretend everything wrapped up neatly. My parents are still who they are, and I don't expect reconciliation. But I walked away with something they could never take back: freedom, independence, and proof that I wasn't the weak little girl they tried to keep under their thumb. My revenge wasn't just about exposing them. It was about reclaiming myself. And as I sit here, diploma on my wall, debts paid, savings secure, and a life ahead of me that's mine alone, I know I've finally won."